Before he was a plumber, he was a carpenter. Hey, I'm BLEIZ, and this is Donkey Kong. In the last episode, I showed the NES version. This time around, we're going to take a look at the arcade version of the game. I mentioned that the NES and arcade version differ in several ways, and right off the bat, you'll see that this version has a scoreboard, as any arcade game would. Though it actually doesn't have the demo or the title theme song that the NES version has. Those things are completely lacking from this version, but those aren't the only differences. We're actually going to see some serious differences right off the bat. But instead of just blabbing on like I usually do, I think I'll let the game speak for itself for a little bit before drowning you with my words. So let's continue so you can see it with your own eyes. Oh yeah. Okay, joking aside, let's really get to it. How high can you get? Yeah, this is back when Nintendo was pushing its secret drug business. No one knew about it. But really, this is just 25 meters, and it's very similar to the NES version. Though that little intro cinematic you just saw, aside from giving me the excuse to make a really stupid and kind of like tasteless joke, it also explains why this construction site is so oddly laid out, and I actually quite like it. It gives some context to this seemingly nonsense game. Aside from the fact that they need a kind of interesting layout to make it enjoyable to play. But yeah, but aside from those differences, 25 meters is actually practically identical to the NES version. You have barrels coming at you that behave just the same. You get points for jumping over them. You also have fireballs, which you also get points for jumping over. You have hammers that let you smash things and act as like pseudo invincibility because you can still get hurt from the back. And if something happens to hit you while you have your hammer raised, the raised hammer can also break things. You have a bonus timer, which when it reaches 0 and after a little bit it will kill you. But the major difference you're going to notice is those blue barrels, one of which I just jumped over. But aside from the physical appearance, they are mechanically identical to the normal barrels. Also, I didn't mention, Pauline up there, lady or whatever you want to call her, is actually shouting help. If I recall correctly, that's not in the NES version. But instead of blabbing about this, maybe I should just stop jumping over barrels that I could just dodge by climbing the ladder anyway, and continue to the next level, which is quite important because the next level was actually cut from the NES version. This is 50 meters, and I'm not sure if I mentioned it in my NES video, but this is the biggest difference between the NES and arcade iterations of Donkey Kong. The NES version completely lacks 50 meters, and I actually think it's a really neat, not level, because level is actually, like rounds. This is a very interesting stage in my opinion. I like how it's laid out. You might notice that like, at times I was moving slower or faster than normal when walking along this area when dodging these cement piles, which oddly enough look like pies. But that's because the platforms that are seemingly made up of rectangles are actually conveyor belts, and you can see which way they rotate, and they change their direction every once in a while. You also have these ladders that move up and down, which prevent you from reaching the top, but unlike 25 meters, you just have to reach the top. You don't actually have to get to Pauline, technically. And of course, there are fireballs and hammers, and they behave the same as always. Now it's time for the dreaded 75 meters, and by dreaded I mean really just a problem for me. It's also practically identical to its NES iteration, although the jacks are actually a different color this time around. Instead of being blue and yellow, they're blue and red. Not really color, but color scheme. But yeah, I'm not going to go all the way down there. I'm just going to make the quick hop. But really though, this is still the roughest level for me. I actually messed up that jump quite a bit, so it's quite good that I made it on the first try. It makes me look like I actually know what I'm doing. I'm faring a bit better than last time, but not by much. Although it might not be apparent, those jacks actually don't like bounce in the same pattern every time. They move a little bit to left and right, which can actually cause a problem for you. But we actually cleared it smoothly, I guess. So here we are at 100 meters. 100 meters, like I keep saying this phrase, but yeah, this is also like incredibly similar to its NES iteration, as it should be. Like I'm saying this like this is a big mind blower, but it is. These fireballs behave the same as the others, other than the fact that they're larger and therefore more difficult to jump over. You might get more points for jumping over them. I don't recall. I might try it if I get the chance to, but for now, I'm not going to risk it. You just have to plug these bolts or rivets, which or whatever you'd like to call them, out of the ground. You can bash the fireballs with a mallet. But other than that, it's same old. Yeah, that's really actually also same old, same old. So I don't know why I decided to point it out. But yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. Something I didn't mention in the NES video, and I'm only remembered to mention now, is that in the standard arcade version of this game, if you were to stand next to Donkey Kong's foot and jump, you'd actually get bonus points because it's registering you moving above an enemy. I'm not sure if it's like actually intentional or a glitch, but it very well seems like it's just a glitch. But that aside, this level's pretty standard. Like it's the same as last time. But the reason I'm not actually showing it off and just talking about it is because although I am describing this as the arcade version, and it pretty much is, this technically isn't. I'm not playing this on a Donkey Kong arcade machine. I'm not sure how I'd really record that. Though you might notice we're running out of time, so it's playing a little jingle. But I'm not gonna let that count down to 0. And of course, you start back at the beginning, but now it says marks it as level 2. You saw that blue barrel that Donkey Kong just threw? For level 2, if you just start running to the right immediately as when the stage starts up, you will be able to pass it. Otherwise, you'll get hit by it. But in level 3, that doesn't work out. He throws it at too wide an angle for you to be able to beat it. So you're kind of just have to wait. I believe I've never been able to pull it off, like even just running straight from the start. But what I was saying though was that technically this isn't identical to the arcade version. You might be wondering how you even play it in the first place, because I might have mentioned this. I'm not sure if I did. The arcade version of the game actually is quite difficult to get a hold of. It's not available on Virtual Console or anything like that. I'm playing this game in Donkey Kong 64, actually. They do have the arcade version, or a near identical version of the arcade version in Donkey Kong 64. That includes 50 meters and all that, and it's pretty much the closest you can get to playing the arcade version without like shelling out for an entire arcade cabinet, or by emulating. This is pretty much your only option, and this is the most faithful version, and also it's easier to get a hold of. That didn't go so well. Yeah, fireballs and these conveyor belts can be kind of tricky, and actually jumping over the cement's actually quite tough as well. It's a very wide obstacle, so you gotta time it really well. And with these shifting conveyor belts, not always the easiest. But anyway, what I was saying though was that the arcade version of the game, which we're sort of playing, like this is like I said, this is the closest version you can pretty much get. But there are a few differences, like the foot thing. I don't know if that was corrected because it's a glitch, or if it just something didn't quite go right in the conversion, like in the porting. I don't know. But the differences are very minor. For one, you'll notice up at the top right hand corner, you'll see I have two little Jumpman or Marios up there, Jumpmans. But in the arcade version, I believe they're below the score on the left-hand side of the screen, up at the top, below it, not even above it. I don't know why they moved that. It seems like a weird change from name, but they did. And while I'm talking about that, I might as well mention like kind of the your HUD up there. Though I already mentioned there's the bonus timer, which if it counts down to 0, you lose a life. But if you reach the end of the level before that happens, or even before it hits 0, you're gonna get bonus points for doing so, equivalent to what's left on the timer. Then there's your score right now and the high score, and that's pretty much it. I just felt like I'd explain that in case I hadn't before. I want to point something out since I'm standing here before I move on to the next big topic that I need to cover. If you jump against this wall, it bounces you back. Like, it's almost like a wall jump, actually. It's kind of odd. I'm not sure why that happens. You think you just like kind of slide along it like an invisible wall, but no, it bounces you. Maybe it's supposed to be wind because we're really high up. We are 75 meters off, I guess maybe sea level, who knows. We're 75 meters off the ground. We're pretty high up. I doubt it's any, like, significantly lower than sea level, so yeah, we're pretty high up in the sky. But anyway, though, what I was talking about, like, the fact that the arcade version is so hard to get, there's a reason for that. Let's talk about lawsuits, because that's really fun, right? I just slapped in the microphone. I hope that wasn't super weird. Okay, so lawsuits. Donkey Kong actually has the game, not the character. this game actually has a weird history with lawsuits. There's only really 2, but they're pretty important to like this game's history. The first one that's relevant to the arcade version, everything I'm about to talk about, is the Ikegami Tsushinki lawsuit, which I'm gonna call it that because I'm not sure what else to call it. I guess Ikegami Tsushinki v Nintendo. I don't know. I just died. But basically, back when Donkey Kong was developed, Nintendo was like still pretty small, like didn't have many programmers to work with. They didn't have a lot of staff to move around, so they called on a man by the name of Ikegami Tsushinki to work and program Donkey Kong as a contractor. Now, in doing so, they gave him exclusive rights. Oh, by the way, I mentioned earlier the fireballs may have a higher point bonus for jumping over them in this level. They don't, and also I fell off the edge because I was careless. Yeah, this game still has fall damage, but back to what I was talking about. They hired on Ikegami Tsushinki as a contract worker. Well, I guess maybe hired isn't the word, but they called him on to program Donkey Kong. I keep saying the same sentence like 3 times because I keep correcting myself, but that's what they did. And in doing so, they gave him the rights, or not in doing so, I suppose, but what they did, they gave him exclusive rights to manufacturing Donkey Kong arcade boards. Apparently Nintendo quickly forgot that they made that agreement because they produced a bunch on their own. Like, I think it's something to the tune of like 800,000 or 800,000 or something. Like, clearly they either forgot about it or didn't care. Maybe a little bit of both. But Ikegami Tsushinki is like, hey, you can't do that. What about our deal? And they're like, whoops, sorry. And that's kind of the reason we haven't really been able to play the actual arcade version of Donkey Kong since then. At least that's the idea. Because, you know, the whole lawsuit thing, blah, 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 they can't, supposedly they can't really, port the actual game or something like that, which led to the creation of a little thing, called Donkey Kong Original Edition, which, is practically the arcade version. Much like this, it's practically the same game, like, you might as well be playing the same game, but this one, like, has more differences from the arcade version than even, this version does, like, because this version, like, it's practically, like, you can't even really tell the difference. It's practically the same. I mean, if you have a very trained eye, which I clearly don't, because I just ran smack dab into a barrel because I'm talking about lawsuits when I should be playing video games. Oh, and yeah, we get to input our initials into this version. I should mention that since this is the first time I've gotten a game over. But back to what I was talking about. Our Donkey Kong Original Edition, it's practically the same. I think, like, it's basically this, but, like, I think there are, like, certain things missing. I think, like, certain animations or something just aren't there. There's something about it. I've never actually played Original Edition. I've seen a little bit of it, but I've never played it because it's not the easiest thing to get a hold of. You can't really buy it from the eShop or anything, which is kind of odd, in my opinion, but it was available on the 3DS eShop for a time. It's no longer available. But you can still find like a little trailer for it on there, which is the little bit I mentioned that I've seen of it. But that's all you're gonna get. But before that, even if I'm not mistaken, it was great. Good job, me. I did a good job. But before that, I think it was pre-installed on certain Special Edition Wii's at some point in time. I'm not sure on the specifics. I think Europe got a release like that. I'm not sure about North America or Japan. I know, like, North America and Japan got it in some manner, and I'm not sure what. But basically, the idea is, if you want that, I guess you're gonna have to shell out for one of those systems with it pre-installed on there, because you can't just buy it. Nintendo won't let you just buy their products. Well, I don't know, maybe, I guess software is more the words. I don't know, product, really? Because when I think product, I think physical thing, but I'm getting really technical about something that really isn't that technical. Even though most of this has been talking about, like, technical aspects of the game and its history, but whatever, you get the idea. But what I was saying, though, it's not that easy to come across, so you're either going to have to emulate or snag one of those consoles for probably way more than it's worth. So good luck with that. Honestly, you're better off actually just getting Donkey Kong 64 off the eShop or something, or even the Wii Shop channel, because I believe it's available on the Wii Shop channel if you only have a Wii. Because you just had to go to World 3, or I think it's called Frantic Factory or something, and there's an arcade machine there, and you get 6 banana fairies, and then you can play it in the mystery menu, which is how I'm doing it right now. So that's neato. A little bit of behind the scenes information. I also like this version because I can play it with a classic controller. Well, I could, not a classic controller, a pro controller. I could do that with the NES Virtual Console version too, but I guess you wouldn't be able to do that with any version of Original Edition, because I don't think it was ever made available on the Wii U. I could be mistaken, but I don't think it was. So, that's the thing. Anyway, back to what I was talking about lawsuits. I felt like there's something else I was going to mention. I don't recall what it was, so if I remember, I guess I'll bring it. Oh, I do remember, and it's not relevant right now, so when it becomes relevant to talk about, I'll do it. That was good. That was like three-way death trap. I was either going to hit a fireball because I didn't time my jump properly. I fell, which is, I could have fallen, which is what I ended up doing, or I could have got hit by the jack. So yeah, I was in a pretty rough spot. It's my fault, to be fair. I'm not making excuses for myself. I know I'm not too great at this game, but I'm at least a little bit better, but anyway, I'll get to that in a second, because there's something I could have segued, I could have segued off that really well onto a topic, but there's another lawsuit we gotta talk about before we get to that topic, and that lawsuit is the one that's probably more well known. It's the Universal Studios Donkey Kong lawsuit. That was, I guess that's what I'm gonna call it. Yeah, let's go with that. Universal lawsuit. That's what you must call it. Sounds like everyone in the universe is being lawsuited. Yeah, everyone's being sued is what I should have said, but yeah, let's go with it. So everyone's getting lawsuited. By that, I mean, Universal Studios saw Donkey Kong, they were like, hey, this is totally ripping off not Donkey Kong? Yeah, Donkey Kong ripping off Donkey Kong. No, but hey, this is totally ripping off King Kong. We have the rights to King Kong, right? We're gonna sue you, Nintendo, and Nintendo's like, oh no, what are we gonna do? So what they do is they hire a man by the name of John Kirby to act as their lawyer. Now, John Kirby is such an ace attorney that he did like a tiny bit of research and found out that, hey, Universal, you don't actually have the rights to King Kong. That's public domain. This lawsuit's totally bogus. And they're like, oh, we don't? And he's like, yeah, because there's actually another case that's kind of relevant to this, because supposedly there's something to the effect that Universal had actually sued someone else because someone else was saying that it was like someone's property or something, and they were suing them saying it was they were saying it was public domain in an entirely different case. So yeah, either Universal Studios has really short-term memory span, or they're liars. I assume it's the latter in this case, but anyway, so John Kirby is super cool hero, ace attorney man. Nintendo's like, hey, we can keep making Donkey Kong now. And they did, and then everyone was happy, and John Kirby even got a little bit of bonus out of it, I guess. It's a really odd bonus, but it's a bonus nonetheless. Nintendo granted him the exclusive international rights to use the name Donkey Kong as a name for sailboats. Why? I'm not 100% certain. I've heard that John Kirby actually like boats were his hobby. I've heard that. I can't back that up. I only found like one source saying that. I don't even remember what the source was now. It was quite a while ago that I read that bit, so I'm not certain about that, but it's pretty interesting nonetheless. John Kirby's also slightly relevant to Nintendo because he may or may not have been the inspiration for Kirby of Dreamland's name. Though Sakurai, the guy who's behind Kirby and Smash Bros. And all that, has actually gone on record saying he doesn't recall where the name came from. So there's no hard proof of that, but that's for a different time. We're talking about the Marios and Donkey Kongs, and how bad I am at it. So, yay. But, anyway, though, that's cool. John Kirby's super skilled. You know who else is super skilled? Hey, good segue. But, anyway, though, nice segu. Okay, I'll quit. What I'm trying to segue into and totally ruining, are Donkey Kong world record holders. Donkey Kong, as any, like, super popular and, super well-known and loved and, enjoyed game, has people who strive to be the very best. I could follow that up with, like, no one ever was, but that's for a different time and not for this Nintendo video. That's for a different Nintendo thing. Anyway, though, dumb Pokemon references aside, I don't... Okay. I think my finger actually slipped. That one I'm gonna make the excuse on. I'm serious. Like, it's not an excuse, because it's still my fault, technically, but, like, I think my finger just slipped on the D-pad. The D-pad's not even slippery, so I don't know why. That one was too good. Like, that was great. I'm glad I got that, like, recorded. That was perfect. But it's perfect going into talking about high scores and stuff. So yeah, Donkey Kong, being a score-based game, has people who are trying to get the highest score possible, and there's plenty of people who have done so and have been recognized as the greatest Donkey Kong players in the world. So let's talk about those people. First on the list I'm gonna mention, I guess, is Billy Mitchell. He's probably also the most well-known on the list, because he's not just known for being the Donkey Kong guy, he's also known as being the Pac-Man guy, and has also done some other classic arcade games that I don't know what they are. That was a really oddly worded sentence, but what isn't odd, what is quite odd is the fact that he was the first one to ever get a perfect score in Pac-Man, actually, from what I understand. But we're not talking about the Pac-Mans, we're talking about the Conky Donkeys. So, I actually just didn't, I was trying to just show that you can jump over those concrete piles, but I did, and then I jumped into a fireball. I was hoping it'd go the other way, and it didn't. Oh well. But hey, I looked semi-cool, I guess. But anyway, back to Billy Mitchell. Not really, though, because we're gonna move on in a second. But yeah, Billy Mitchell, for quite a while, was the world record holder for Donkey Kong, and he went back and forth with several other people on that. One of those people being Steve Wiebe. Steve Wiebe also held the world record multiple times, and both Billy Mitchell and Steve Wiebe were featured in a documentary about Donkey Kong called The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters. Not only is that documentary super cool because it's about Donkey Kong of all things, but it's also super cool because apparently it's received very high reviews. It's really well received. Pretty much anyone I've talked to about it, which is very few people, but still have said that, hey, it's a good movie, and I agree. So check that out if you are interested. It's mostly about Billy Mitchell and Steve Wiebe and like them being the very best at Donkey Kong and stuff like that. Like not really, like, but just like, you know, like the experience, the sort of trials that come with doing this sort of thing. Like, it's just about like them doing that, and it's really neat. Cause like when you really get down to it, like especially seeing me play horribly at Donkey Kong, whether you're better or not worse than me, you'll probably like acknowledge the fact that Donkey Kong's a really weird, tricky game with a lot of weird loopholes and a lot of weird rules and like technical things going on with it. So it's really cool to see someone be able to just like break it down to not even a science, more like an art, I suppose, like a little bit of both. I'd say a little bit of a science art kind of deal, and just be able to like perfect the craft, I guess. I don't know if craft is the word, but perfect the practice of Donkey Konging. I don't know. So yeah, that's really cool that there's actually a documentary about Donkey Kong of all things. I think that's really neat. What I also think is really neat are some other people who are really good at Donkey Kong, such as Hank Chin. I think that's how you say that name. I'm not sure. Some of these names are a little weird. I actually like looked up Steve Wiebe to even pronounce it. I wasn't sure if it was Weeb, like Weeaboo, or Weeby, or Weeabe. I don't know. I'm kind of terrible with remembering names, and I'm gonna have to pronounce some like non-super common names, I'm kind of probably gonna be in trouble too. Luckily, I could find a recording of his name, but I couldn't find like pronunciations of some of these other guys with the 5-second Google searches I did. So let's just wing it. So Hank Chin is another well-known Donkey Kong player. You know, usually I have a pretty easy time with 100 meters, but it's probably because I'm talking about like things other than, well, actually I'm talking about Donkey Kong still, but like talking about things bouncing between different people and stuff. Blah blah excuses. I'm actually really bad at the game. That's the truth. So anyway, Hank Chin, I can't say much about him other than he's a really skilled Donkey Kong player who held the world record at least once or twice. I think he held it at least twice. Then there's also Robbie Lakeman. He's held the world record at least twice as well. And then we're going to get to the last main one I'm going to talk about, which is Wes Copeland. And Wes Copeland is especially relevant right now because as I was preparing to make this video, he beat the world record, now is the high score record holder for Donkey Kong. I'm just getting myself trapped like this is Pac-Man or something. That was really pathetic, but it was kind of me being careless and goofing off. So yeah, that's kind of what I expected. But anyway, back to Wes Copeland. Wes Copeland recently beat the high score, which was held by Robbie Lakeman at the time. And currently the high score for Donkey Kong which of course is Wes Copeland's, is 1,190,000, and that's a crazy number in my opinion. As you see, my high score is 43,400. I'm a little bit far away. I might get it eventually, though. You know. Maybe I shouldn't, like, I looked away from the screen for a split second for, like, no actual reason, like, other than to, like, check my recording. And that happened. Good job, me. So, anyway, back to Wes Copeland. He recently, took the world record. Good for him. No, really, though, actually, it's super cool. Like, watching all these people play is, like, sort of, like, magical, as was that triple barrel jump, which is totally possible, as you saw. I just jumped over 3 barrels, because I'm not actually that terrible at the game. I'm just slightly terrible at the game. I'm competent enough to pull that off when given a perfect opportunity to do it, so that's cool. But anyway, though, back to what I was talking about. Wes Copeland taking the high score is not only super cool, it's also kind of like revenge, because I'm not sure if it's this year or last. Well, actually, it's 2016 now. But I'm not sure if it was 2015 or 2014. I want to say it's 2015 though. Robbie Lakeman was the high score record holder for a while, and then Wes Copeland came and just snatched that right up from him and became the world champion. Or I don't know if world champion's the proper term, because it's not like a tournament, but you get what I'm trying to say. He came and he beat Robbie Lakeman's score. And then 6 hours later, Robbie Lakeman came right back and like just snagged the world record back from Wes Copeland. Wes Copeland was the high score record holder for a grand total of 6 hours. That had to sting a little bit. That's a little bit of a, I don't know what I was trying for there. I was trying to jump back for like no actually good reason other than so I wouldn't have to climb it, but that's what I get for being careless. But anyway, though, man, I'm like, my gameplay is actually like deteriorating as I progress, like, into the video. Case in point. But anyway, though, maybe I should like just keep talking about people who are better at the video games than I am, which is apparently all I'm really good for. But anyway, though, so yeah, 6 hours. That's all the time Wes Copeland got to bask in the glory of being the best Donkey Kong player in the world. But hey, he just took it back. And it seems like for a while it's going to stay that way, because Robbie Lakeman actually, I believe he said something about taking a break from Donkey Kong or something like that for probably a long while, something to that effect. So for now and probably for a while, Wes Copeland's going to be the man to beat. And good for him. I think that's really cool. I also think that slick save I just had was really cool, though I'm actually lying, it wasn't that great. It was okay, I guess. But even though he is technically the best Donkey Kong player in the world, so to speak, there's actually another man by the name of Dean Saglio. I think that's how you pronounce it. It could be Saglio or Saglio or some other obscure pronunciation that I'm unaware of. Who knows? I've never seen that name before. I've seen Dean, but not Saglio. But anyway, about him, he has a higher score than Wes Copeland, actually. His score is a grand total, and I mean grand total when I say it, of 1,206,800. That one's crazy, but there's a catch, as there always is with these types of things. He scored that high while emulating Donkey Kong. He played it on an emulator, the arcade version of Donkey Kong. And that's not recognized as legitimate. I don't know if he used, if it was like a tool-assisted run or something like that. I don't know if we can prove if it was or wasn't. I've seen it, and it's very impressive. It's just like, we don't know. And it's just not recognized as super legitimate because it was emulated, so I am legitimately bad at this game, though, so let's, yeah, okay. I keep, like, breaking off from what I'm talking about to mention how bad I am every time I fail. And I think it's getting a bit, like, jarring at this point, so maybe I should stop that. It's pretty standard at this point. But anyway, though, so yeah, Dean Saglio has a super high score, but we're not counting it because it's emulated. It's not just me, like, not counting it, like, that's the thing. It's not counted. It's not just me saying, oh, it's emulated. Everyone's saying, it's emulated, so it doesn't count. So, Too bad. It would be really cool to see that become legitimate, but to be fair, it's not the easiest thing to do. It really isn't. I do recommend you go look up like all this gameplay for these people though, because it's really cool. If you are interested in Donkey Kong to that sort of extent, I do recommend you look it up because it's really neat. It's really cool to see these people just go at it. Because I mean, it's not like competitive fighting games where like, you know, it's super fast or like super technical, and there's just like so much going on at once, or you can like really see like the breakdown of what's going on. Because like Donkey Kong, comparatively is a really simple game, but it's still like pretty difficult and pretty tricky. So it's still really neat, and like these people like always go to the kill screen, which I mentioned in the previous part. Everyone like has kind of like a different playstyle, sort of, kind of like, you know, there's only so much you can do, but certain people just choose to do things a bit differently every time. Just like I've finally chosen to actually beat it and stop goofing off. But it's still, anyway, you get what I'm trying to say. It's really cool, and I do still recommend that you go check that out if you are interested in doing so. But nonetheless, that's a great way to end off the video, because yeah, I think I'm going to end it here. I pretty much talked about everything I wanted to talk about, and I think I've shown this off quite thoroughly. So if you want to play this once again, yeah, like Donkey Kong 64 is probably your best bet, unless you're not against emulation. I'm not going to tell you to emulate, because I myself am not a fan of emulation. Like there's certain, I don't think it's just like, oh, it's the work of the devil, but it's technically like in a lot of like it has a lot of like legal issues with doing that sort of thing, and all that. You know, like you're kind of stealing. You know, like, because especially if it's like a newer game or a game that you can buy like non-used, you're kind of cutting into people. I'm going on a rant / PSA / like preaching segment of like telling you, I'm not gonna tell you to or not to emulate. I'm not gonna tell you, like, because no matter what, I can't stop you anyway, and it's not like, oh, I hate you now or something. Why have I gone off on this tangent at the end of the video? Let's get off of that. Basically, yeah, your options are Donkey Kong 64 if you're fortunate enough to have it, original edition, and straight up like getting an arcade cabinet, or emulation if you want to play the arcade version of Donkey Kong. And it's certainly enjoyable, but like it's still Donkey Kong. Like, it's not gonna blow your socks off. So that's up to you. But anyway, now that I've talked about everything and blah blah blah, and I've like recapped the whole like how do you play this thing, I think I'm gonna end it off here. But next time around, I think I'm gonna do something a little bit different. And you might be like, hey, what could that be? I mean, like I mentioned, we talked about the NES version. We've shown the NES version. We've shown the NES version. We've shown the arcade version, or the best version of the arcade version we're gonna get. So, like, what's next? Like, there's not much to Donkey Kong, as I've reiterated time and time again. So, like, what is there to do, right? Well, I guess we'll just have to wait till next time to find out. So I guess I will see you the next time we ascend.